Hello everyone, and welcome to my first ever Facebook Live video. I hope that there are a couple of people out there, because otherwise it's really basically just me talking to myself, which might not be that entertaining. So welcome. I thought I would spend a bit of time chatting about writing and my books and the inspiration behind them. And please, if you have any questions, write them down. I can see your comments. Hopefully they'll pop up as you write them, and I'll answer all of the questions that you might have. Not quite sure where to look. Should I look there? Is that weird? Should I look at my screen? Not quite sure. So let's chat about becoming a writer. It's not something that I thought I would do. In fact, it's something that I'm going to be talking about tomorrow at the National Women's Show, when I'll be speaking about switching careers and finding your passion. If you're in the Toronto area, please stop in. It's at the National Convention Centre, so that should be really good fun there on Front Street. So becoming an author isn't really something that was top of my mind really when I was a kid. Growing up, I wanted to do something completely different, be in business, which I did for a very long time. And it wasn't until I came to Canada, started up a business here, which failed miserably, and I was wondering what on earth I was going to be doing. So after a lot of soul searching and being down in the dumps, my husband said, well, what did you like to do when you were a kid? And I said, well, I used to like writing. I mean, I was the one at the kid at the back of the class who would always put their hand up and say, Miss, we haven't had a writing assignment for ages. And then people would throw stuff at me to get me to shut up. But anyway, I like to write. So Rob said, well, why don't you write a book? So if there are any authors out there, that seems awfully simplistic to say, why don't you just write a book? But I did. When inspiration struck, finally, I started writing my first novel, which was Time After Time. Here we are. That was published by Avon, HarperCollins' UK digital brand, in June 2016. After that, I wrote another book, which turned out to be called The Neighbours, see, behind me as well, which was my second book, and that came out in March 2018, this year. And my next novel is going to be Her Secret Son. I'm going to show you this, but actually the cover's going to change. We just found out that there will be a different cover, but it will still be called Her Secret Son, as far as I know so far. That will be coming out in May of next year, and right now I'm writing my fourth novel for publication in 2020. So that's now what I'm doing. So in terms of when did I know that I wanted to be an author? In my early 40s, so I guess it's never too late. I often get asked what the inspiration is behind the novels. And I would say for my first one, for Time After Time, this is a rom-com. You can see from the cover it's far more romantic and much, softer, shall we say. And that one really was born out of a place of frustration, because we moved to Canada, like I said, and my company had failed. And I was wondering what my life might have turned out had I made different choices, specifically had I not come to Canada or met my husband on the internet and whatnot. And so I thought that might be a good premise for a book. And I started writing it, this ode to Groundhog Day and Sliding Doors, if you're familiar with those movies. So that was the inspiration behind Time After Time. For The Neighbours, the inspiration for that was I was looking out of this window, and we live on a courtyard with 9 houses, and 2 of them went up for sale in quite quick succession. And I was standing there, you know, with a cup of tea, being a bit nosy and wondering who might buy the houses and who might move in. And I remember thinking, what if an ex-boyfriend moved in? How awkward might that be, depending on which one it is, of course. Well, all of them actually, it would be awkward. And I started thinking about 2 characters, you know, ex-boyfriend and girlfriend. Why had they split up? How long had it been since they hadn't seen each other? And why would they not tell their respective partners with whom they're now married and have kids that they used to be lovers? What are they lying about? Not only to each other, but also to themselves. What are they hiding? So that was the inspiration behind The Neighbours. The inspiration for Her Secret Son, here we are, that's that one. Again, a new cover will be coming. That was while I was on the treadmill, believe it or not, watching a news segment. And I can't go too much into detail because it will reveal too much of the book. But I wanted to tell this story from a different angle. So Her Secret Son is another domestic suspense and will be coming out in May next year. And it's about Josh, who's a 35-year-old man who has a partner, Grace, and she dies in a very tragic accident and leaves behind her 7-year-old son. Josh wants to organise legal guardianship for young Logan, but when he goes looking for the birth certificate, he can't find it. And that's not the only secret he uncovers or mystery he has to solve. And ultimately, all of those lead in him having to make excruciatingly difficult decisions. Sorry, Josh. The book I'm writing now is about half-sisters, and that was actually a segment on the radio that I heard about somebody losing or finding, more to the point, a ring at a playground and wanting to return it to its rightful owner. And I started wondering, well, what if you found a ring and you find the owner, but they've got this really glamorous lifestyle and you want that life? So that's kind of alluding to what might be coming in the novel, but it's still in first draft stages. So that will be for 2020. Plenty of time to tell you about that one, all in due course. So I see a few people have joined. Hello. I'm so happy to see you today. We have a couple of questions. Bambi asked me a question. What would the main characters in your book have to say about you? They'd probably say, stop messing with our lives, I would imagine, because that's really the domestic suspense genre that I write. I put your average, everyday normal people into very difficult decisions and see how they react and how they act, and then basically watch their lives implode. So I think that's probably what they would say. Stop messing with us, please. But I do apologize to my characters because I love them all equally. There's another question from Bambi again. If you had 3 minutes with a new author, what writing, publishing wisdom or tips would you share in that time? Wow. So one of the things that I would definitely say is to read. Reading, and not just in the genre that you want to write in, but different genres too. I try to read across the board. I do read a lot of domestic suspense because that's what I write, but I also read some romance. I read some historical fiction, although not as much as I should. And I do read nonfiction, but not a huge amount, and I probably should too. So read. The second thing I would say, and this is probably, for me at least, the most important bit of advice that I ever got, which was trust yourself enough to write a really bad, terrible first draft. And then trust yourself enough that you will go back and clean it up. And it took me a while to really understand that, because I thought, why would I write a bad first draft? I mean, who would ever read that? And the point is that nobody will read it. So when I write my first draft, I don't even call it a first draft, I call it a skeleton draft. It's about 2/3 of the word count. So my novels typically range between 90,000 and 95,000 words. It's about 320 pages or so. And when I write the skeleton draft, it's about 60,000, 65,000 words. There's a lot of description missing. There's a lot of, most of the dialogue tags are missing, and probably not even all of the story is there. But I trust myself enough to go back and then layer it. If you write music, if you paint, if you bake, you know that you don't start off with a perfect product. You have to layer it. If you're baking a cake, you make the sponge, and then at the very end you do all the fancy decorations. If you're painting, you don't start off perfectly in the top left corner and work your way down. You do a rough sketch, a rough outline, and then you add details and color as you go along. So it's very much the same with writing. So those are probably the two most important things that I would say. Oh, thirdly, surround yourself with people who also write. Get a good critique group, take some courses, and don't give up. I see I have a question from Olivia. Hi, Olivia. She says, do you ever draw inspiration for your characters from people you know in real life? Sometimes, yes. Now, probably more so in Time After Time, because that was my first book. And the main character, Hayley, is in her early 40s. She has, you know, brown curly hair going on. And I remember my husband reading it, and he got to the first sex scene and he closed the book. He said, I can't do it because all I could see is you with another guy. So quite deliberately for the neighbors, the main character, Abby, is very sporty, very fit, and blonde, and very slim. So she is not like me at all. And quite sporty, but the rest doesn't follow. So occasionally I will put a character fully formed in the book. So in The Neighbours, there's a scene where Abby, the main character, is going, one of the main characters is going to the graveyard where her brother has just been buried. And they're driving through the town, and she sees a young kid on a skateboard, and he has shorts with these red flames. So he's got these really bright red corkscrew curls, and he has a plaster cast on his arm that's neon green. And that guy, that kid, was actually somebody I saw when I was out driving, going somewhere, whatever. And I made a mental note of him. I thought he's such an interesting character. So there's a kid, you know, maybe a young teenager somewhere in this area who probably has zero idea that he's a secondary character in my book. So yes, sometimes there are fully formed people in the book, but generally, no, I don't. I might take some traits, and there might be little sprinkles that I put in. There's a couple of things from between Rob and I that he laughed about when he read them, because he identified it as part of a conversation that we've had. But generally, no, I make 99% of the stuff up. It's all up here. So we have a question from Becky. Hey, Becky. She's my bestie. She's sitting on a train right now, probably waving at the screen, and everybody looking at her thinking she's completely mad. She asked, how hard is it to start a novel? Oh gosh, I want to say it's not that hard, but you know what? That would be completely wrong. It's not hard. I find it easier to start a novel now because I've written a few, and I think the more you write, the more confident you become in your abilities. What I found in the past is that plotting really, really helped for me, and not everybody is the same. Some people don't plot at all, but for me, the more I plot, the easier the work, not the easier, but at least I know where I'm going. I have maybe a false sense of security, but I know that just starting a novel off the cuff can be really, really daunting. You know, if you think, oh gosh, I'm going to have to write 300 pages or 90,000 words or whatever, it seems unfathomable, really. But if you break it down into chunks, if you plot chapters, if you have character outlines and so forth, it makes it all so much easier. I don't know if you know the expression, how do you eat an elephant? I didn't know that one, and when somebody asked me that, I said, I don't know, with a knife and fork or something. But what they actually meant was one bite at a time. Like any project you would attack, again, whether it's writing music or baking or doing something at work or whatever, year-end accounts or whatever it may be, you start and you work your way up. You don't start just with the whole thing already done. It's layering and working in different levels. So we have some more. We have lots of hellos and waves. That's fantastic. Hello, Book Clubbish. When you start writing or drafting a story, do you know how it will end, or do your endings come as a surprise? I love that question. So it depends. In Time After Time, the first one, I knew what the ending would be. It changed slightly, but not really. Certainly the last chapter barely changed at all from the first draft, skeleton draft, even until the final book. With The Neighbours, I had a different ending in mind. But I blame Game of Thrones. We were watching a lot of Game of Thrones, and my character went all Game of Thrones on me. And I wanted to go in one direction, and the characters, or my subconscious took me in a completely different one. And I was writing a scene and off they went, and I thought, wow, this is so much better than what I'd originally planned. So The Neighbours was a bit of a surprise. Her Secret Son, oh boy, this one, the ending, the last 100 pages, almost killed me twice, the last 50 pages probably, because I couldn't figure out who was going to die and why and by whom. And I hadn't planned it enough, I hadn't plotted it enough. So that one, I was, stumbling around in the dark for quite some time before I'd figured it out, with the help of my editor too. In terms of the one I'm writing now, the one about half sisters for 2020 publication, would you believe? That one, the ending so far is what I've imagined, and I've finished the skeleton draft. I'm now on the first round of edits, and so far it hasn't changed because I've plotted really well. Jen Lynette says, I can't wait for your new book. Thank you. I'm really, really excited to get that one out there, Her Secret Son. Bambi says, it's great you can mess with fictional characters' lives. Yes, real colleagues tend to frown upon that kind of thing. You can't really do that. Another question from Becky about research. Is there anything in particular that you enjoyed researching the most? Yes, there is, and I love the research part. I don't write historical fiction, and I am in awe of people who do, because that seems like so much complicated work, and the attention to detail and getting it right for all the history buffs out there. So for me, in The Neighbours, it was certainly geographical location, making sure that was all right. I even called the hospital up in the Lake District of Cumbria, I believe, where I had set part of the book to make sure that I referred to it the way the locals do. And for Her Secret Son, I needed help with a lawyer, as I did actually with The Neighbours. But for Her Secret Son, I found the website of a law firm in Syracuse, because this next book is set in upstate New York. And I filled in their little contact form and asked them whether they could give me 15 minutes of their time in exchange for their answering questions, 15 minutes in exchange for featuring a character with their name in the book. And within 5 minutes, the senior partner of this law firm phoned me, Mr. Harlan Gingold, and he, A, has the perfect lawyery name, and B, answered all of my questions, gave me his mobile phone number so I could bug him some more, and he does now feature in that novel. So that is really fun. I find people are very generous with their time, and it can be hilarious too when you phone Poison Control and ask them if they could give you tips on how to poison a character. They didn't, strangely enough. They said we can't dispense that kind of information, even when I'd shown them that I was an author and whatnot. So I love doing the research part. But you have to be careful, because research can lead you down rabbit holes, so you have to be quite careful about that too. Writer's block from Book Clubbish. Any tips? Yes. Go and do something else, read, set a timer and just for 20 minutes and just write. Skip the chapter or the section that you're blocked on. If, say, you're, going back to Time After Time, I kept starting the first chapter and erasing what I'd written, and I just couldn't get started, but I knew how chapter 2 would start. So I skipped chapter 1, and I didn't actually write chapter 1 until I'd finished the book, and then thought, oh yeah, I gotta write the first chapter, or the book doesn't start in the right place. So there's plenty of things you can do for writer's block, and all of those have helped me in the past. Carla asks, do you write every day when you're working on a book? For the most part. I do have 3 kids. They're teenagers. They're 15 and 14-year-old twins. So that can be quite busy. But during the day, certainly, I do have a lot of time, or a big block of time. So I do try and write every day, not on the weekends unless I'm editing a book. So if I'm in the skeleton draft or going through multiple passes at the beginning, I will write every day. Minimum word count, if I'm doing the skeleton draft, is 2,000 to 3,000 words roughly. And I always build myself a schedule where I have the word count target for the day on a cumulative, you know what I mean, adding the numbers together. So I can see where I'm at, and I stick to that religiously because it gives me the sense of control, and I know where I'm going. Because also now on a book a year, I have a schedule that I need to adhere to, because even though I say I write a book a year, that doesn't mean I have a year to write a book. It's probably about half that. So I do have to be very structured in terms of plotting and in terms of sticking to my word count. When I'm editing, that means when I'm going through the final stages before I finish the manuscript and it becomes a first draft that I will then give to my editor, all bets are off. When I was writing Her Secret Son, the due date, the delivery date, sounds like a due date on this list, a bit like giving birth at times. So when I was approaching the delivery date for Her Secret Son, I sent Rob and my husband and 3 kids out for the weekend. I said, you've got to leave me alone. You know, I'm not doing anything. I am not here. And I just wrote. So it really depends which phase I'm in. Jess, hello Jess, good to see you. She asks, what time of day do you prefer to write? Well, when the kids have gone, so 7:30 onwards. And that's what I prefer. But again, if I'm in the final editing stage, it can be midnight. I don't mind staying up really late and working. We have Olivia, who asks how I choose character names. There are different methods to that. I go on baby naming websites. I look at books on my shelf and maybe combine author names. I've been known to do that too. Sometimes they just pop in my head because I have a specific character. But what I also do, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but this is my rogues gallery for The Other Sister, the one that I'm writing right now. That's a working title, by the way, The Other Sister. It sounds pretty lame, I'm sure, and I know that the fabulous people at HarperCollins will come up with something much better. But anyway, I go and research photographs, generally with hairstyles, and I look for, say, I don't know, male 35 hairstyles or something like that, and take a picture, put them up on my pinboard, and they then become my character. And sometimes that sparks the name too. And sometimes they just appear in my head. So it's it comes from different places. Let's see how we do on time. My goodness, I've already talked your ears off for 23 minutes. Oh, Lisa asks me, can you explain your method where you interview the characters? Yes, I can, absolutely. So I have a questionnaire that I found on the internet. It's not just husbands you can find on the internet, people, but also interview questions for your characters. And I can't remember where I stole it from, but borrowed it from. But I didn't invent this, so the credit goes to whoever did this one. So this is the character sheet for Eleanor, who is in my latest book, the Sisters one. And what I do is basically answer all of these the questions there. So there are certain things, you know, her appearance, how old she is and how tall she is and what she looks like, of course. But then there are also things like whether they get on with their parents, if they have children, if they drive, what do they drive, when were they the richest, the poorest, what's the one thing they wish they had said, why didn't they say it? So there's 3 pages of questions. And I basically interview my characters and fill these out for the main characters, not for all of them. And while the vast majority of this stuff will never make it into my novels, what it does do is give me a really good understanding of who the characters are. So instead of them being flat and 1 or 2 dimensional, they become fully rounded people to the point where I end up having conversations with them. Often when I'm washing my hair, which is it's just very strange. The inner workings of an author's brain, I'll tell you, it's all very, very strange. So So I had another question here from Bambi. What is the scariest thing you have ever done for fun? Okay, so hands down, that would have been on April the 9th, 1999, when I boarded a plane to fly to Canada, to New Brunswick, to meet Rob, who I had met 10 weeks earlier on the internet, on ICQ, back in the dark ages when you could either be online or on the phone, but not both at the same time. Photographs downloaded in sections, and you had dial-up modems. So we chatted for 10 weeks and sent photographs and whatnot, and then I got on a plane and I flew to Canada. And before I got there, he'd booked his return flight with me to Switzerland, and we got married 10 weeks after meeting face to face. So that's probably also one of the scariest things I've done, getting married 10 weeks after meeting my husband. Next year it'll be 20 years, so it all worked out. Bambi also asks, if you could take 5 things to a deserted island, what would you take? Can I take family and friends? Is that allowed? If that's not allowed, what did I write down? I decided lip balm, because I just cannot do without that. Books, of course. Chocolate, because I'm half Swiss, so come on. Sunscreen, suntan lotion, because I burn otherwise. And a toolkit, because you need a toolkit if you're on a desert island, because you need to be able to build stuff. For a message from Book Clubbish, a viewer on the Book Clubbish page says, "Hi Hannah, love The Neighbours and look forward to your next book." That's wonderful. Thank you so much. That's amazing. Let me see. Oh, Donna Shaw says, "Hannah, Becky and I are not related. Total strangers." Oh, well, Becky Shaw, meet Donna Shaw. How funny. That's wonderful. So let me know if you have any other questions. We've got another couple of minutes left. In the interim, for those of you who are interested in the plotting part, I thought I would show you my plotting sheet for Her Secret Son. Look at that. This is my post-it chart. Each post-it represents a chapter. And I'll tell you a secret. I do the post-it thing because they're really easy to move around. And they're also really satisfying to scrunch up in balls and throw at the wall, because they don't damage anything when you've got something wrong. So, oh, we do have another question. I have a silly one, says Bambi. If you could mix 3 animals together, which ones would you choose to make the ultimate animal? I think I would take, oh gosh, I'd have to have a dog, because I used to have dogs when I was a kid. I'm quite allergic to them. A dog would be great. A bunny, because they're really cute. And then I'd have to have something like a tiger or something that's really fierce, or something that, you know, that I could, you know, that could defend me or something. Or, well, no, that's a really interesting question. Bambi, I think you should write children's books, because you have a very, very vivid imagination. So let me tell you again about the appearance tomorrow. I'll be at the National Women's Show. Here's my badge. I'm ready to go. Look at that. So the National Women's Show is already on this weekend, actually, in Toronto on Front Street, and at the Metro Convention Centre. It's a huge conference with speakers and live shows. And for those of you who are in the GTA and who know Mike Holmes Jr., he will be there too. I believe some firemen are giving a fashion show, which should be entertaining, to say the least. And I will be there tomorrow at 12 p.m. on the health and wellness stage, giving a talk about switching careers and following your passion. And you will get to see little pictures, gems like this one. This was me in, I don't know, 1980 something. Look at that hair. Isn't that spectacular? The hairspray I went through, people, before I accepted I had curly hair was ridiculous. So if you are in Toronto tomorrow, stop by at the National Women's Show. After my half-an-hour session talking about finding your passion, I will be at the Book Clubbish stand at about 12:45, and we have, I believe, 200 books for me to sign and for me to give out to you for free. So tell your friends, bring your friends, and hopefully I will see you all, or some of you anyway, at the National Women's Show tomorrow in Toronto at the Metro Convention Centre at 12 p.m. I am guaranteed it's going to be a fabulous day. So I hope to see you there. Thank you all very, very much for joining me. This has been fantastic. The fact that you supported me in my very first Facebook Live video, I hope I have made you proud, and I hope that you will tune in again. Until then, I wish you an absolutely stellar Friday evening or afternoon or day, depending on where you are, and a wonderful weekend. Thank you, and bye for now.